Hello students, today we will be discussing ecosystem services. This is a new module for this particular week. As a topic also its relevance is very important. By now you have understood that. We would also like to bring out another aspect of this urban ecosystem codes, and probably ecosystem services is going to be the most important vehicle for this discussion. And the discussion is something like that ecosystem is good, people know about it, but in the urban areas integration of ecosystem is becoming a challenge. So maybe you come from the ecology side or I come from the academic side, and we try to always appreciate that no, urban ecosystem should also integrate the natural ecosystem as much as possible. But we have to also think about the role of the governance, local governance, who not only manages the spaces but also manages the resources. So they have to also have not only understanding but also have the strong logic, because they are the people who are responsible for the society's upkeep. This ecosystem service understanding, and especially the ecosystem service when we will go for the evaluation part, these are very strong tool even for the local government to understand, to support a proposal which is advocating this ecosystem services with numbers. So it's a very objective way to really look at the significant role of ecosystem. So from that perspective, if we can try to look at, then this particular week's module will help us to not only understand what is the ecosystem service, and once we understand that better, we can also convince the decision makers, the policy makers, that how to really take care of this ecosystem as we are getting the benefit through the services. So now let us come for this particular week's basket. It has been designed like that. Initially, we will be discussing the ecosystem services. Then types of ecosystem services will be the second lecture in this week. We will take two classes for understanding this evaluation of ecosystem services, followed by our concluding discussion for this lecture will be urban ecosystem services. In today's class, we are going to have only 5 simple verticals, ecosystem services, followed by evolution of this ecosystem services theory. Though all of us, we do understand, and at least if right now you don't have clarity, once we will be finishing this class, you will have the clarity that ecosystem services, people understood it from the starting point of our human civilization. But bringing it in a theoretical form and discussing the concepts and evolving those concepts again and again with the advantage of the advanced science and technologies, these are certain things we can see in this evolution. Understanding the flow of ecosystem services, that is very interesting. We'll be discussing that. And then we will be discussing ecosystem services against the two fundamental concepts of ecosystem, that is functions and processes, which we have discussed only at our very early modules, module 1 and module 2, that also we will bring back. And we will complete today's lecture with the wetland ecosystem, and we will understand the ecosystem services vis-a-vis functions, processes. Also we will discuss the interdependency. So with that, we can go forward for today's lecture. So first thing, I would like to bring your attention to this right hand side image which talks about the ecosystem services. Before going into the definition, just try to understand it from the conceptual side. Ecosystem services we talk especially as we get the benefits out of the ecosystems. Who produces that benefits? Ecosystems, they produce the benefits. Who enjoys that benefits? People. For that only we are interested. If any other species is enjoying that benefit, we are less aware or less interested. but we have to get the benefits. That's the priority. So there is a continuous flow of getting these benefits out of the ecosystems, which are actually they are playing the role of the producers. We will also see the drivers of change. Who are the drivers of change? These people. They drive the changes into these ecosystems. So when we talk about the ecosystem services, and I was discussing the benefits, you can look at the left hand side image. Plant pollination, watershed protection and regulation, soil formation and fertility. Then the other benefits like carbon sequestration and storage, wild species and habitat protection, air quality, pest and disease control. So there are n number of, there are more than these benefits. There are several other benefits which we get from the ecosystem services. So we will be discussing now about the evolution of this concept, which, as I rightly pointed out at the beginning of the class, that nothing new, but in the new scientific process when it started in that particular centuries, we will check how these ecosystem services have been documented. So it is only 20th century, 1950s to 1970s, functions of nature, we actually referred Odom again and again. What he is saying here, let's see. An ecosystem is a unit that includes all the organisms functioning together in a given area. Space is very important. Interacting with the physical environment so that flow of energy leads to clearly defined trophic structures and material cycles. This is the very basics of ecosystem, and we started from that. When that particular term ecosystem services was coined in the scientific group, it was in 1981. Ecosystem services are the processes and conditions through which natural ecosystems and the species that make them up sustain and fulfill human life. Please note that ecosystem services are being defined for the human lives. So that was the early definition of ecosystem services. And further, it has continuously through decades, it has modified, refined, and we will see how it has happened. Next contribution I would like to bring here, that is of Dr. Gretchen Daly. In 1997, the volume she edited, that was Nature Services, Societal Dependence on Natural Ecosystem. And in this particular volume, she had contributed a chapter, and the chapter was titled as What are Ecosystem Services? Dr. Daly is a very remarkable person in this particular ecosystem study area. She has a very famous project, Natural Capital Project, which we refer again and again when we talk about the not only the urban ecosystem but also the natural ecosystem. What she talked about in this particular chapter, she talked about two things: ecosystem goods, biophysical elements that are directly or indirectly consumed by humans, such as food, water, and minerals. And she segregated the term ecosystem services. She said the processes that produce or support the production of ecosystem groups. So, ecosystem groups are the result, and the process that produce or support that production is the ecosystem services. Mostly involve biogeochemical cycles. So, at that particular age, we find that in 1997 also, ecosystem was discussed as the goods and the services separately. 1997 also we see during the same time that economic valuation of services, that concept has crept in very strongly. That means it's not only talking conceptually about the services, but can we also bring some objectivity into it? One of the pioneer academician is the Dr. Costanger. What Their group is telling us ecosystem services are the flows of materials, energy, and information from natural capital stocks, which combine with manufactured and human capital services to produce human welfare. And from this particular journey only, we can see again and again this economic valuation, the need for this valuation of the ecosystem services are coming in. Because now we can identify, again, you have to also understand the technological advancement. Now we cannot only discuss those complex process, but we can also see, we can also try to track them, to monitor them, and to bring the monetary value against them. How? There will be many different options we will be discussing in later part of this week. In 2005, we see one of the most important contribution, and it came from a large number of scientists who came together, again under the aegis of UN and as well as World Bank. And this Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, which was published in 2005, but it's actually work of 4 years, 95 countries, scientists, they contributed in that. What they are saying, ecosystem services are the benefits people obtain from ecosystems. These include provisioning services such as food and water, regulating services such as flood and disease control, cultural services such as spiritual, recreational, and cultural benefits. And the fourth category is the supporting services, such as the nutrient cycling that maintain the conditions for life on Earth. So, this is the one of the most seminal contribution on which today's ecosystem service concepts, theory, and its accounting, everything has evolved further. Another very interesting contribution came from a group of economists, the Economics of Ecosystems and Biodiversity team. In 2010, they brought the first report, and in which they have also done some evaluations for very large projects all around the globe. They selected the cases for which they have done it to showcase that yes, it is difficult, but you can actually bring the valuation against these ecosystem services. So they said ecosystem services are the direct and indirect contributions of ecosystems to human well-being. And TIV is advocating that these ecosystems support directly or indirectly our survival and quality of life. That is so very true. Two important things to notice that this TIV group, they replace the supporting services which we were discussing in the previous slide only in the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment with habitat services. And ecosystem functions, they defined as a subset of the interactions between ecosystem structure and processes that support or strengthen the capacity of an ecosystem to provide goods and services. So that's the way they looked at the function, and they talked about the process, they talked about the ecosystem services. Now we come for the next concept discussion, that is the ecosystem accounting. Ecosystem account describes bookkeeping of interactions of living organisms and components of the environment within specific geographical areas. Now let us take advantage of the image on the left hand side. That's more like a flowchart. We can start from the left hand side, ecosystem assets. Here what we can do, physical metrics. We are also estimating, we are discussing the accounting. So physical metrics we like extent, condition, these we can measure. Then from that starting point there will be ecosystem services which people are getting. What different type of services we can get? Provisioning, regulating, cultural, and again this can be measured, physical and monetary metrics we can introduce and we can measure. But as again we are discussing that ecosystems are actually today having lot of changes because human beings' presence and management is present there. So, human inputs become very important in today's ecosystem discussion. So, not only ecosystem services, we discuss the human inputs in terms of labors, produced assets. So, wages, cost, again, these are the metrics which we can again evaluate. So, human inputs and the ecosystem services, they lead us to the production of goods and services. And this production of goods and services can bring complementary or conflicting impact. It may have the trade-offs. We will again come back to discuss the impact and the management later. But first, let us complete the flow. Production, if the goods and services are there, the benefits are there. So, transactions by people, that happens, the benefits. And that again can be evaluated. I will explain the term IVA later. And who are going to get or enjoy that benefits? Beneficiaries. It may be individual people, government, corporations, NGOs. So, who are getting the benefits? So, certain things you can include into the GDP. You can see this dotted circle, and you can see that these are the things, certain things which can be easily included into GDP. But certain things like part of the ecosystem services, everything cannot be translated easily or directly as the part of GDP. So, there we have to really understand that how to do those things. Those will be interesting lessons for us. As I was mentioning, this is a loop. So, whatever productions are happening, it is going to have its impacts on the ecosystems. It may be emissions, it may be the water is getting cleaned, whatever may be, positive and negative, both. And at the same time, once we start getting the benefits, we get the taste of that, we start managing it so that we continuously can get better and better ecosystem services. So, environmental and ecosystem system showing the stocks and flows of natural resources, that's the title of this image. Yes, I told you that I will be discussing this IVA. IVA is actually a term used in INVEST model, which means the integrated valuation of ecosystem services and trade-offs. I was mentioning INVEST, Dr. Gretchen Daly. So, in continuation to this discussion of ecosystem accounting, we need not to forget that the accounting is not a blanket thing or stamping thing. I can do the same accounting everywhere. Very much social and landscape context is important in this accounting. So, let us see what Keith and his team has talked about it. Ecosystem assets and the services they provide to support human well-being are located spatially across the landscape. Even in this small image also we can see if it's a hilly area, its ecosystem services are different, biodiversity are different, culture is different, and if you come down and you continuously get the benefits of it. Food and fodder. So, landscape is very important as well as the social context. The urban context as well as maybe the developed country versus the south. Those type of contexts are also important when we go for the ecosystem accounting. The next discussion in this concept is coming from the IPBES. You remember this intergovernmental platform which we discussed in our last week class? In 2018, this IPBES, it came into existence in 2012. In 2018, they contributed with this nature's contributions to people, NCP, that's the concept they have propagated. What they talked about it, they said nature's contributions to people are all positive contributions, both tangible and intangible, that people obtain from nature. And they have tried to identify those positive contributions and they classified them under three different groups: material, non material, and regulating. I will suggest you to read this regulating, non material, and the material nature's contribution to people, and then you will easily understand that they are actually having a very good overlap with the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, but there the classification is actually having four verticals. And the last concept which we will be discussing that came in 2021, three capital resources by Sir P. Dasgupta. Partho Dasgupta's report, which was commissioned by the UK Treasury, he frames inclusive wealth as the concept. And what it does mean, that it is sum of the three types of capital resources with the goal of providing more accurate measure of national wealth and long-term sustainability than GDP alone. There are a lot of discussions going on, debates also, that whether GDP can really indicate the society's progress. And in that type of discussion, I think this inclusive wealth, the concept works very well. What is those three types of capital resource? Produced capitals, that is the man-made assets and the physical infrastructure like road, machinery, buildings. Second is the human or institutional capital, collective knowledge, skills, capabilities of population, which are acquired through learning and norms, behaviors, institutions that define interactions within a society, laws and social inclusions. So this is the human capital side. You can keep on extending it. And the third one is the natural capital. Natural resources such as forests, minerals, obviously the rivers, these as well as the ecosystems and their services. So these are the three capitals which can inclusively brought under the frame of inclusive wealth. Very clearly he is mentioning financial capital, that is money, stocks, bonds, that is a claim on real capital, that is the produced human and natural. And financial capital is not a resource in itself. So it's a very interesting way to look at the concept of this ecosystem services. So now we will come to the next part, that is understanding the flow of ecosystem services. Healthy ecosystem, if we would like to have, then we have to have the active processes, strong functions, so that we can get the reliable services. If we try to break this chain, the service will collapse. This highlights the interdependence of process, function, and service. Like if the erosion of processes are happening, functions will be weaker and we will get the degraded service. Ecosystem services are visible outcomes, but they originate from invisible processes within ecosystem. This is very important to remember. Biological and physical processes like nutrient cycling, pollination, and water flow drive ecosystem functions. So, we will be linking now the ecosystem processes with the ecosystem services quickly. We know the ecological system, the structure, composition, and continuously, as you rightly pointed out now, the processes are going on. So, it's a continuous process. And it is bringing out this output as the services. Who are the beneficiary? The social system is absorbing those services. So there is the social system, there is the ecological system, continuously they are having the interactions. It may happen at the local scale, it may happen at the wider spatial scale, also in the temporal scale as well. So it's a past, present, and future as well. So services, benefits to the society derived from ecosystem processes. Composition and structure drive the process. Processes generate the services. Further elaboration on the same concept, ecosystem functions, processes, and services. From that particular context, if we try to understand this ecosystem service flow, then on the right hand side, I would like to start with this ecological dimension when the ecosystem functions and habitat services have been mentioned. Please read through this particular diagram carefully. Then from this ecosystem functions and habitats, we are getting the biodiversity outcomes, and there are continuously processes involved into it. On the left hand side, we see the social dimension where human behavior is actually controlling, influencing the human outcomes like demography, development, and equity. But that is not the end. Human behavior is also impacting environmental impacts, it is creating stresses, or it is also bringing changes in the ecosystem services, whether it is provisioning, regulating, cultural, like that. So there is a social ecological landscape properties, and this is again happening at the not only at the local scale like property catchment, it is also happening at the regional scale as well as the global scale. Potential management and the policy levers that helps. So human actions which alter the ecosystem processes that has been mentioned, stresses like forest loss which disrupt the functions, disrupted functions which shift the ecosystem services like carbon storage, water quality that get affected, changes in services that affect the human well-being and equity. And ultimately, we talked about the policies which can reshape interactions to restore the ecosystem functionality. Now, let us see this last segment of the discussion, that is the ecosystem service versus function versus process. So, quickly we can go through the ecosystem structure, process, function, which is bringing out this ecosystem goods and services. Once it is goods and services, we are accepting that based on it is having certain values for us, either it is socio-cultural value or ecological value or economic value, and in total they can have a combined values all as well. So this total value is actually helping in the decision making. Ecosystem functions are defined as the capacity of natural processes and components to provide goods and services that satisfy human needs directly or indirectly. And once that is satisfying and we are acknowledging, we go for the decision making process so that we can really either maintain them or we can modify them. We have seen in MEA these two terms has been used as provision and culture, but here they have used the term production and information. So it's a recap only. Ecosystem process which we have discussed. Ecosystem functions are the ecological outputs and properties that result from ecosystem processes and sustain ecosystem integrity. Ecosystem services are the benefits people obtain from the ecosystems. So, ecosystem functions are the outputs, but until and unless it is helping us, we are not really appreciating it as an ecosystem services. So, that's the difference. We understand the process and function difference, function and service difference, isn't it? Now, let us see quickly with some example. Ecosystem process, fundamental biophysical changes and reactions in ecosystem. Ecosystem, that is the process, the function is capacities arising from structures and processes, what ecosystems do. And ecosystem services are human valued outcomes from ecosystem functions. So, any example will work like photosynthesis, which will go for the function like we will have the food production, and here we can go for the food as a service. And the focus for process is the internal ecological mechanism, for the function is the ecological role or outcome, and the final one is the service where we try to get the value, we use it, benefits. I'll be discussing wetland ecosystem to understand the service, function and processes from a particular ecosystem perspective. So, we'll be discussing the processes one by one and then we will go for function and service. Denitrification, we discussed about this process when we discussed the wetland. What is the function involved in this? Uptake from the water and use of nutrients by plants. Service we get improved water quality through reduced nutrient load. Dependency, if we try to check, we can see the microbial activity, plant presence and nutrient inputs. These are very important to get this service. The second one, we discuss the sediment trapping by wetland vegetation and slowing water flow. That's the process. Functions, retention of sediments and pollutants within that wetland body. What services we get? Reduction of erosion, improved water clarity. Who can influence it? Vegetation structure, flow rate, upstream land use. They can influence this wetland service. Third process will be downward movement of water by gravity from the wetland into underlying strata. What function it is doing? Groundwater recharge. The services we are getting, sustained base flow, so important, and improved groundwater availability, which is very much linked. Who can impact it? Soil porosity, water table depth, and wetland hydrology. The fourth process which we will be discussing, that is also related to water only, movement of water from rivers during high flows to inundate a floodplain surface, fill the depressions and saturate the soil. What are the functions it is getting? Flood water it is storing. So it is not coming to the habitats, it can be stored properly. Reduction in the downstream flood risk we can achieve if we have this type of system, wetland in place. And who are depending, who are influencing these particular services? River flow regime, rainfall intensity, and wetland hydrology. Next, we will be moving towards the soil, peat formation. In the wetland, accumulation of dead plant materials under anaerobic condition, that's the process continuously happening. What are the functions it is offering? Carbon sequestration and soil formation. So, we are getting the benefit of climate regulations and long-term carbon storage. But the entire process is depending on the waterlogging, low oxygen. If you have more oxygen, it will not work. Slow decomposition is important, vulnerable to drainage or any disturbance. The sixth one, we will come for the nutrients, again the soil related, decomposition and cycling of nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen through plant uptake. Other physical processes as well, like adsorption, decomposition, and chemical one like ammonification and nitrification processes. So, both physical as well as the chemical processes. What are the functions we get out of it? Nutrient cycling and water filtration or water purification. So, it influences the soil fertility, water quality, clean water supply. So, these are the services. What we need to understand, that interdependency, nutrient cycling improves water quality for use in drinking water, agriculture and fisheries, and at the same time enhances the soil fertility for food production. And the last process we will be discussing, that is absorption and deposition of carbon and CO2 from the atmosphere and temperature regulation. The functions, carbon sequestration and climate regulation, and the ecosystem services we get, carbon sink storage and the heat regulation. Interdependency, if we try to look at, then we can see the carbon sequestration is helping wetlands to regulate the climate by fixing the atmospheric CO2 and storing the carbon generated by decomposed vegetation. So, with this we are trying to understand, I think this is a good example which we can read again and we can understand the link between process, function, service, and we can also understand their interdependency. So, today we have discussed the services, concepts, and the flow as well as this interdependency with an example of wetland. This is the list of reference. Thank you.